to benefit us and to grant us an increase of beneficial knowledge, a knowledge that brings us closer to Allah, because ultimately the ultimate goal is always to come closer to Allah and have a connection with Allah. Ultimately, the ultimate goal is to come close to Allah and to have a connection with Allah. And like we said in the last class, that's why Allah, He says that those who truly fear Him and truly have a true awe of Allah are those who are studied. إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءُ. The famous ayah is that indeed those who have true khashya of Allah, those who have true awe of Allah and they understand Allah's majesty, are those who are studied from His servants who are ulama. The alim is the one who is studied and he has knowledge. So knowledge, ultimately, the ultimate goal of knowledge is to increase you in awe of Allah and a closeness to Allah and to grant you a life with Allah, because the life with Allah is the greatest of all life, and you're alive when you have Allah and you're not heedless and dead when you have Allah. But the individual that lives life without Allah, he's heedless and he's dead. Even if he's walking in dunya, he's dead without Allah, because the remembrance of Allah is life. The Prophet ﷺ, he said the example of the individual who remembers Allah often and the one who does not remember Allah often is like the one who is alive and the one who is dead. So remembrance of Allah, Salah, Quran, anything to do with Allah is a source of life and nourishment to the believer, to the soul of the believer. It's a source of nourishment, fulfillment, consolement to the heart of the mu'min. The same way you eat food and you eat healthy foods and you take medication to fulfill your physical needs. You have a spiritual need in a heart that needs a connection with its creator, and the way you fill that up is through remembrance of Allah, and it grants you a source of life. And enjoyment in life comes through acts of worship and obedience to Allah. True enjoyment and fulfillment comes through acts of worship and obedience to Allah. I say this because praying salah and going to the masjid has a certain sweetness to it. There's a certain ladha you get. There's a certain ladha and sweetness you get through going to the masjid, praying salah, making wudu, making hajj, fasting. There's a certain sweetness. It's a halawa. And that sweetness that you receive is an everlasting sweetness. It doesn't get old. It does not get old praying Salat al-Isha. When you think about it, what do I mean? I'm trying to say something here. Like when you go to Isha every single day in the masjid and you feel good every time you go. Like you have a certain sweetness in your heart you feel in Salah. You feel cleansed going to the masjid. Making wudu, you feel cleansed. You feel a sweetness in ibadah. You receive a certain sweetness and pleasure through acts of worship, because the remembrance of Allah is all greater and it's what nourishes the soul, and it does not get old. Worshipping Allah does not get old. The halawa and the sweetness remains. On the flip side, we have something in dunya that you do. Indulging in food or in any desire, such as giving into your desires, whatever it is, not to get explicit. Any desire you indulge in dunya, it gets old. Dunya gets old. There's a video game that is set to come out on a certain date, and you look forward to buying that video game and you count down the weeks and the months, and ultimately, finally, the video game comes out. You pre-ordered it. You go pick it up from GameStop. You pick up the video game and you're excited, and you play the video game for a day, and you don't sleep all night. You play the video game all night. You play the video game the second day. You play the video game the third day, all day, 72 hours straight, video game. The fourth day you wake up, you look at the video game and you want to puke. You're sick of its face. You're done. That's dunya. You have your heart fixated on a certain relationship where you think that this is going to bring you fulfillment, enjoying your life. You have your heart fixated on something in dunya. A certain girl for a guy or a certain guy for a girl. Your heart is fixated on this said individual. When I get this said individual, I'm going to be fulfilled. I'm going to be happy. You get this said individual and you realize it's dunya. You didn't receive what you were looking for. That's the nature of dunya. And the nature of Allah and acts of worship is the absolute polar opposite. The more you do with ibadah and coming close to Allah, the more you want, and the more it never gets old. It remains. The pleasure remains. You read Quran every day after Fajr. We have brothers, they have Quran halaqas here in Masjid Yunus, in Paris, and everywhere. You go to any masjid in the world, you find a Quran halaqa. A bunch of middle-aged men reading Quran. They wake up and they lose sleep. and they're not in the comfort of their cover and their pillow at the most crisp time of sleep to read Quran, because it never gets old. And every day you receive more pleasure from it. That's why we say ultimately the ultimate goal of anything we do is Allah and getting closer to Allah. So we start off every class by talking about this beneficial knowledge that brings us close to Allah and increases us in taqwa. Because if knowledge is not bringing you closer to Allah, and if it's not increasing you in taqwa, there's a big problem. It's having a negative impact on you, not a positive impact. We want knowledge that has a positive impact on our souls and our hearts. That knowledge which is beneficial knowledge that increases us in awe for Allah, grants us a stronger connection with Allah, grants us a better understanding of halal and haram in sharia. Beneficial knowledge is knowledge that when you learn it, you act upon it and you implement it, and ultimately it becomes a source of your salvation in the hereafter, because it's a proof for you and not against you. So we start off by asking Allah for beneficial knowledge. And we start off by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us sincerity in all our actions, in our sayings, and istiqamah, steadfastness, and qabul, and acceptance, because with these three things we receive our salvation. Doing things, once or twice is easy. Anybody could do something one time, two times, but being consistent in doing something is a true sign of strength. It's a true miracle. Al-istiqamah karama. They say that istiqamah, this notion of steadfastness, being steadfast in anything, whether it's reading Quran daily, whether it's going to the masjid every day for Isha and Fajr, whether it's doing anything you do consistently, it's truly a sign of dedication, and they call it a miracle. To be steadfast, they call it a miracle, because it's not easy being steadfast. Like we said, it's easy to sit down and open a Quran and read 20 pages, and then 4 months go by, you don't touch the Quran. It's extremely difficult to open the Quran and read 5 ayahs a day. It's difficult. It's not easy. Consistency is not easy. Consistency shows dedication and sincerity. Because when you're sincere, you push yourself for a strong purpose to do something. You're not motivated by alternative motives, because alternative motives, they go away. You could motivate yourself with something like an alternative motive, and it withers away. The alternative motive doesn't keep the zeal strong. But sincerity, ikhlas, doing something for the sake of Allah, and seeking the pleasure of Allah alone is what keeps you going and grants you istiqamah, steadfastness, because you're doing it with a good intention. Because when you do something for an alternative motive, yani dunya motive, yani you do something so the girl sees you, you do something to get a job, you do something to get money, you do something to get a meal, whatever the dunya motive is. Dunya motives are many. If you do something for a dunya motive, dunya will let you down. We keep saying this. Dunya will let you down eventually. The girl will let you down, the job will let you down, the whatever it is that you're doing it for, it will let you down. So when you get let down, you don't have motivation to do the act, which is scary. But when someone does something purely and sincerely for the sake of Allah, he will never be let down by Allah, because the sincerity is there for Allah. He's doing it for Allah. He's not doing it to seek a thank you from the masjid. He's not doing it to seek a volunteer appreciation dinner from the masjid. He's not doing it to seek sister so-and-so's saw her vision or whatever. He's not doing it to seek something. Alternatively, he's doing it for Allah, so he remains in doing that. We started off talking last Monday about this new class that we have begun called Tazkiyah. We said Tazkiyah is a purification of the soul. Tazkiyah is to come close to Allah through discipline. And we said that Islam ultimately comes throughout the Sharia with this notion of Tazkiyah. Yani the Muslim individual, the individual who upholds Islam, the regular Islam every day, he does Tazkiyah naturally. Because our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was brought to grant us Tazkiyah. Our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. So he was sent down to grant them the book and the wisdom, which is the Sunnah, وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, and to grant them a purification. Our Prophet's ultimate goal is to teach us the Quran and to grant us the wisdoms of the Quran and the understanding of the Quran through the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and the Ahadith, and to grant us a form of Tazkiyah to our souls, a coming closer to Allah through acts of worship. If we look at acts of worship, we see that all of them have a bit of difficulty attached to them. They have a bit of mashaqqa attached to them, and this is natural. There should be difficulty, because through the difficulty you receive reward. And the more difficult something is, the more rewarding something is. And the more sincere something is, the more rewarding something is. So then we realize that in order to have a larger reward, there has to be two things that are increased in this act: more difficulty and more sincerity. And we always talk about fasting because the reward for fasting is a secret. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that fasting is for me. As-sawmu li wa ana ajzi bihi. He says, I save fasting for me. The hadith is a long hadith. He says every action of the son of Adam is 10 rewards. From Allah's infinite mercy is that He grants the action that we do 10 reward. Anything we do, not 1 reward, 10 reward. Any sin you commit, 1 sin. So all the actions of the son of Adam are 10 reward, and it could be multiplied based on his sincerity. He says, except for illa as-sawm, فَإِنَّهُ لِي وَأَنَا أَجْزِي بِهِ. The Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the hadith Qudsi, except for the act of fasting, it is for me. Allah says, He attributes it to Himself. He goes, it's for me, and I will reward it accordingly. Fasting is for me, and I will reward that accordingly. We say, why is fasting so rewarding? We say it's so rewarding because Allah, He does not disclose to us the reward for fasting. So you know that it's a surprise from Allah. You will receive this when you meet Allah, and you will be very happy. لِلصَّائِمِ فَرْحَتَانِ. The fasting individual has 2 times where he will rejoice. The first time he will rejoice is when he breaks his fast. It's a rejoice of the struggle you went through in the day. And when you meet Allah, you'll be so happy with what Allah has prepared for you. So now we see that fasting has an immense reward attached to it, immense secret reward. We don't even know about it. Why is that? We look at fasting, we find 2 things in it that we just mentioned. It's a very sincere act, and it's a very difficult act. Fasting is not easy, it's difficult. It's a complete day of you fighting your desires. It's a complete day of you abstaining, not eating, not drinking, not giving in. Not eating, not drinking, and not giving in. I'm abstaining the entire day. Difficult act. It's hot outside, difficult act. People are eating in front of me, abstaining, difficult act. A lot of difficulty attached to fasting. But the second thing we find in fasting that's very interesting is that it's very sincere. Fasting is the only act of worship that you could keep solely between you and Allah. Of course, in Ramadan, everyone knows you're fasting, but I'm saying, like, if you want to fast, today was a Monday. It's a sunnah to fast on Monday. If you want to fast on Monday, fasting is the only act of worship you can completely conceal and hide. Meaning that if you want, it could be immensely sincere, and it is immensely sincere. It's only between you and Allah. Only Allah knows you're fasting. Because someone can offer you a drink and you can say, no thanks, I'm not thirsty. And someone can invite you out to lunch and you can say, no thanks, I'm not hungry. You don't have to say, I'm fasting. You could hide this beautiful act. So we see that fasting is immensely sincere. Due to the immense sincerity behind the act of fasting, and due to the difficulty of fasting, we find that it has an immense reward. The reward for the fasting individual is very rewarding. The bottom line of what I'm saying is, if we look at all the acts of worship in Islam, we'll find that they come to grant us tazkiyah, a natural form of purification to our souls. The more someone upholds the obligations of Allah, the more he finds his soul being purified. And that's natural because the heart is a vessel, we've said. The heart is like a vessel. When you commit a sin, it grants you a black dot on this vessel, and it grants an impurity. It stains the purity of this vessel, of your heart. And when you do good through acts of worship, when you do good, it erases the wrong and it grants light to the heart, meaning it purifies your heart. So our Prophet ﷺ, he was brought to us to relate to us from Allah, to relate to us what Allah has revealed to him from Quran and from Sunnah, and to grant us a purification of our own selves. And the individual who's truly successful is the individual who fights his desires and doesn't give in to his desires. Because what differentiates us from animals, the human being from an animal, is his restraint. His restraint. We have restraint. We have discipline. We don't give in to whatever we want whenever we want. The animal eats and it sleeps and it uses the bathroom and it goes to sleep when it wants. The animal doesn't have work. It sleeps whenever it wants, and it wakes up whenever it wants, and it eats whenever it wants, and it goes and it has intimacy with his spouse whenever it wants. This is an animal. The human is not someone that is an animal. The human is regulated by regulations of Allah. And the more you uphold the regulations of Allah, it grants you tazkiyah, purification of your soul. And you see that people that have true, strong mental health and physical health, they are people that are disciplined people. That's why the army, when you go join the army and the Marines, they're very keen on certain aspects. The Army and the Marines and the Air Force, Navy, whatever it is. What is the first thing you think about when you think of a soldier in the Army? Whether it's American Army or Syrian Army or Bangladesh Army, wherever army in the world. What is the first thing you think about when you think of an army? Someone raise your hand. Yeah? Discipline. 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 Wallahi, discipline. You just think, oh, army equals they all have a certain haircut that they all follow because it's protocol. They all wear a certain uniform. Their uniform is always a certain way. They all wear the same boots. I just think of like a disciplined person. I think, oh, he went to the army, he's not a drug addict. Immediately in my head, immediately, he doesn't have addiction. Of course, I could be wrong, but this is what I think, me. I think army, discipline. Army, second thing I think of is what? What else do you think of when you think of an army person? Yeah, good, you strong. What else? Routine, good. What? In the army, you have a chain of command, right? You have a lot of something for your commander. What is it called? Respect. You think of discipline, and the sisters mentioned routine and they mentioned strength. That all comes through the discipline that they have, right? Discipline and respect. It's so interesting, wallahi. Like being a person in the army, no deen, I'm talking about secular army. They emphasize two core things, like to be in the army and to increase your rank in the army is based upon two things, your discipline and your respect. Like how do you increase your rank in the army? Through discipline and respect. Through discipline and respect. The individual who's not disciplined, he doesn't increase in ranks, he remains a small guy. And the one who is not respectful, he remains a small guy, he doesn't move up. And I'm speaking secular terms, army, navy, marines. They got it. The army people, they got it. They realize that success only comes through discipline and respect. That's what Islam is. That's what Tazkiyah is. Tazkiyah is discipline and respect. Waking up for Fajr and not sleeping at the time of Fajr, this is discipline. This is discipline. And good etiquette and having respect is a sign of purification. So, having discipline and being a respectful individual is something that we see, not even Islamically speaking. These army people, they found this out and they emphasize this immensely in the way that they are kept. Islam comes and it tells us to dress nicely, and it tells us to cut our fingernails, and it tells us to not have extra so long hair, to be well kept, to be well kept, to shave certain areas certain times of the month, like to keep yourself clean. And the Muslim is clean outwardly. And the outward cleanliness of the Muslim is a reflection of his inward cleanliness. Because if the inside is clean, it reflects on the outside. And that's what wudu is, and that's what ghusl is. All of this is a reflection of your inner state. But I was making a point, and that's that in the Marines and in the Army, they are disciplined people and they are respectful people, and this is what Tazkiyah is, just being disciplined and being respectful. Being disciplined and being respectful. And we talked about in the last class. We started off the last class not speaking exactly about Tazkiyah, but talking about the etiquettes of the seeker of knowledge. And we said that there's certain etiquettes that the seeker of knowledge has to do. We said, of course, the first thing was to have sincerity. And what were some other things that we said? Yeah? Good, having respect for your teacher. What else? We mentioned 9 things. We said the first thing was sincerity in your intention. And we said having respect for the teacher. What else? Yeah, sitting in a respectful manner. Yeah? Yeah, good intention, having a clear intention, having a good intention, sitting appropriately and respectfully, having respect for your teacher. All of this we see is respect, to have respect. In order to seek knowledge and to gain knowledge, you should be respectful. And we mentioned a story at the end of the last class. And that story was the story of Imam Malik, the famous scholar of Medina, and his mother. His mother asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up, and he said, I want to be a singer. And she said, no, I don't think you're made out for that. You should go study. So she dressed him up really nicely, and she sent him off to the greatest scholar of his time in Medina. She sent him off. And then he came back after 2 to 3 weeks, and she asked her son what he learned. What did you learn? And he said, I learned this, and I learned that, and this. And she said, no. Go back, because you did not learn anything. Go back to Rabi'a and go study from him again, and take from his etiquette before you take from his knowledge. So Imam Malik says, so I went back to my teacher Rabi'a, and I stuck with him for years, and I took nothing from knowledge except for etiquette. I learned how to be respectful. We say in order to open the key, or in order to open the locked door of knowledge, or the treasure of knowledge, one has to have respect. Respect for himself, respect for the knowledge that he's seeking, and respect for the teacher. And with this respect, you are received openings from Allah. Allah, He opens up on you. And all of this that I'm mentioning is not something off topic. The etiquettes of seeking knowledge, which was sincerity, sitting upright, being good with your teacher and respectful to your teacher, working upon the knowledge you receive, feeling that Allah is watching you, having humility, being patient and steadfast, not being embarrassed to ask, and to not be busy with other things during the class, not to be busy with your phone or whatever it is in dunya during the class. All of these things are not off topic. Talking about the etiquettes of seeking knowledge is exactly in line with what we're talking about today. We're talking about Tazkiyah. And the topic of this class on Mondays is Tazkiyah. Having respect and discipline is Tazkiyah. The Prophet came to teach us respect and discipline through the Sharia. The whole Sharia, everything in Islam is discipline and Tazkiyah. Everything. Having halal and haram in your life is discipline and Tazkiyah. Like being able to drink something, it's halal. And refraining from something that's haram, this is Tazkiyah. This is not giving in to what you want. Because you're not free to do whatever you want. You're not free to do whatever you want. You're regulated. The Muslim is regulated in his sleep through salah. Right? In the summer timing, Isha comes in at 10:28 p.m. Isha comes in so late. Fajr comes in at 3:38 a.m. It's a long day. You never get a long period of time where you could sleep as a Muslim. Never. Your sleep is always inconvenienced by something. Your sleep is always inconvenienced by prayer. This is discipline. You don't let yourself sleep when you want. You sleep when Allah lets you sleep. And then you don't eat what you want as a Muslim either. You only eat halal. You don't eat pork. You don't eat something that was killed in a non-halal manner. You don't drink anything you want. You check everything if there's alcohol in it. You make sure there's no alcohol. You're regulated in what you intake. Your intake is regulated. Your sleep is regulated. And then we have other obligations and acts of worship that regulate other things, other aspects of our life. Our financial transactions and our business dealings are all regulated by the Sharia. I don't buy a house with any type of mortgage. I look for an Islamic option. Everything, there's a regulation behind it, and there's a law behind it, there's halal and haram behind it, and all of this is ultimately for your benefit because it purifies yourself. And you realize that you're not like the normal person. The normal person, he does what he wants when he wants, he buys what he wants when he wants, he goes and he buys lottery tickets, he doesn't think of halal haram in his life. And that is detrimental to his soul because it brings him down. The one that gives in to everything is not happy because he's a slave. So ultimately we realize something else. We see that we're either going to be slaves to our own selves and our desires and our whims, or we're going to be slaves to Allah and His command. And the individual who's a slave to Allah is a happy individual because he's free. Because if you're a slave to Allah, you receive true freedom. Because the regulations that are the Sharia, halal and haram, they just help you navigate your life in a free manner. Because without street signs, without a stop sign, and without traffic regulations and traffic law, there would be utter chaos out in the world. The world would be chaotic. It would be chaos outside in the streets. The red light comes to grant you freedom, so you don't get in a car accident. So the regulation of Allah, we look at it like traffic law. It's like traffic law. The regulation, the Sharia, is a boundary. But when you uphold the boundary, when you uphold this boundary, you receive true freedom, and you're not enslaved. Because when you don't uphold the boundary of Sharia and halal and haram, you find that you become a slave to yourself, and when you become a slave to yourself, you do not receive true freedom. You're not free. And I'll give an example. The woman that wears hijab, she's commanded to wear the hijab. Hijab is an obligation. She receives reward for every single time she wears hijab. I want you to understand something. Like a woman, she has virtue from Allah. She has a high status with Allah because she has something that the man doesn't have. She's gifted an act of worship that the man does not have. That's the hijab and dressing modestly through the hijab. Because every day the woman wears the hijab, she receives reward because she's upholding an obligation from the obligations of Allah. We said that an obligation is something that when you do it, when you perform it, you receive reward for it. And when you don't do it, you're sinful. So the woman that doesn't wear hijab, according to all the Muslim scholars in the world, because it's something that's qat'i, she's sinful. Of course, everyone's on a different level. We don't judge. We ask Allah to guide us all. We ask Allah to keep the women that wear hijab steadfast in their hijab, and the woman that doesn't wear hijab, guidance to the hijab. And I'm not saying that the woman that wears hijab is better than the woman that doesn't wear hijab. No, we're not saying that. But we have boundaries in Islam. We said hijab is fard 100%. It's an obligation. The woman that does not wear hijab, she's in sin. The woman who's wearing hijab, she's upholding an obligation, so she's in reward. The woman that wears hijab now receives a regulation from Allah, a boundary. Upholding this boundary grants the woman freedom because her body is not objectified to men. Because the man can't see her body because she's wearing proper hijab and jilbab. So your body is not objectified. And I say this to you all, I don't wear hijab, so I don't know. But I was an imam in Florida, and the amount of convert sisters that converted, that told me this, is something called mutawatir. It's something that you can't call it a lie. Because every single woman that converted, they said the same thing to me. Like all these women, they're converting, and they go, Islam granted me freedom, I feel liberated. And I'm shocked, because everyone looks at Islam as subjective, and it's difficult, and it's boundaries. You're born and raised in America, you go to public school, you can't have this, that, you can't do this, that, you can't have a girlfriend, you can't smoke. So, oh, Islam is all haram, haram, haram. I'm bound, I have a boundary. No, brother, no. You're looking at everything wrong. Your perspective is completely wrong. The way that you're perceiving everything is wrong. Islam comes to grant you freedom, brother. Look at the people that didn't have Islam and they realized that they were slaves to themselves, and they were sick of it. So, all of these women, Habibi, yo, Habibi, sit there, sit on the wall. All of these different females that converted to Islam, they said, "Oh, Shaykh Ismail, we feel so free and liberated." After a week or 2 weeks of them wearing hijab, I asked them, "How is it going?" They're so motivated and excited to wear this hijab, this thing that they feel that liberated them from society and societal. Like, you have to look up, you have to always reach a certain point, and you have to be a certain way in society to be considered good looking as a female, and it makes life for a female very difficult. It makes life for a female in our society very difficult, because they have to look a certain way and have a certain figure and spend this much hours on their hair and makeup and nails. Islam comes and it says, don't worry about any of that. Your beauty is for your husband, and you should hide your beauty and you guard your beauty. Islam comes and tells the woman to wear hijab properly, so their body is not seen by men, so they don't become a sex object, so they don't become an object that is just for the pleasure of man, but they have more value to them now. So all these convert sisters, they cry and they say, "Oh, I feel so liberated. Islam is the best." But then you have a Muslim sister that doesn't understand the value of the hijab because she was raised in it, and it's just cultural. So we should understand that, like, everything comes for our own betterment, and it comes to free us. Islam comes to free us, and regulations, they come to free us, not bind us. Halal and haram is not binding. Salat al-Khams, 5 prayers a day, it's not binding. It's actual freedom. And the Muslim who's on this, he feels the freest of the free, and he always feels good, and his mental health and physical health is always good and in a good state, because he feels tranquility and comfort that he won't find by giving into what he wants, that you don't find by doing what you want and when you want. So you find certain people addicted to certain things. You find the person that does not have guidance in his life, he's addicted to the lottery, he's addicted to Newport cigarettes, he's addicted to marijuana, he's addicted to vaping, he's addicted to an e-cigarette, he's addicted to a lava cigarette, all these different new cigarettes every week they come out. Addicted to all these things, and he finds happiness enjoying that, and when he doesn't get it, he gets agitated. When he doesn't get it, the vape, he gets agitated. He goes to school, no phone, agitated. He's addicted to text messaging, he's addicted to Snapchat, he's addicted to putting things on social media and getting likes. These are all addictions. So you have someone that's addicted to these things, and he chases these things because he thinks that he receives fulfillment and happiness from these things. But no, he doesn't receive any of that. He receives misery through this. All of this is an intro to Tazkiyah, because you realize where you find true happiness. True happiness comes through purifying yourself, which is discipline and respect. That's how you receive happiness and contentment. Chasing likes on social media, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, all of it grants you anxiety, because you're in a relationship that's not perfect, or you don't have a relationship at all, and you open Instagram and everyone is happy and they're all good looking. Every girl and every guy is good looking. It's not real, it's all fake. And they're all happy in their relationships. Then 10 years go by and you find out that this guy killed his wife. And you go watch the 13-hour YouTube trial of the TikTok murderer. Every picture and video he has with his wife has 17 million views, and they're all happy and smiling, eating at the nicest restaurants. Then the trial comes out to grant him a big embarrassment in this dunya. He gets embarrassed. They come out with text messages and videos and all of this that happened throughout his time on TikTok with his wife. They're both beautiful people. Like, they're both good-looking people, and they're always happy. They're all miserable. It's not real. They're all miserable. Only the Muslim could see through fake, because he's granted Iman, he can see through fake. The Muslim doesn't want nothing to do with Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook. He wants nothing to do with it. He sees it, and his stomach starts to turn. He becomes nauseous because he sees through fake, like a CAT scan. You know, a CAT scan, you go, you break your arm, you go to the hospital, they give you a CAT scan. The CAT scan sees through your skin. The Muslim with Iman, he sees through the fakeness of dunya through Iman. The Iman is your CAT scan. It gives you the ability to see through and penetrate fakeness. So you're going to be addicted to certain things in this world. Either you're addicted to things that are unlawful, such as lottery and cigarettes and vaping and weed and haram, Addictions of looking at things on the internet that are inappropriate, biggest addiction in the world now. All these different articles coming out with looking at the filth on the internet. Everyone's addicted to it. It's easily accessible. Everyone has a smartphone. Everyone is by themselves. It's easy, quick comfort, quick this, that. Addictions are a lot. Addictions and wrong are a lot. People are addicted to seeking validation from other people. All addictions. Lack of discipline. Lack of discipline. Then you have the flip side, an interesting side. The flip side is the mu'min, the one who sees through the light of Allah, and he hears through he could hear through the hearing. You know, Allah guides his hearing, and Allah guides his vision, and Allah guides his comprehension because he has iman, because he goes to Fajr, because he reads Quran. He's a disciplined person. He has Allah in his life. This person is addicted to other things, and this person receives his anxiety and his discomfort when he doesn't uphold one of his addictions. His addictions are going to Fajr in the masjid, praying Salat al-Fajr in the masjid, Jama'ah. You have a certain group of people, they're called Ahlul Fajr. They're called the people of Salat al-Fajr. Why are they called the people of Fajr? Because they're the certain individuals that they will not miss Fajr no matter what. Every masjid has a group. Every masjid has a group. So you take an observation in your life, you say, why is this guy addicted to Fajr? He's addicted. He never misses Fajr ever. He will not miss it. Everything in his day, the way he eats and the way he sleeps and the time he sleeps and how much gas he has in his car, everything is based upon him making it to Fajr. He's addicted to it. Just like the guy outside is addicted to crack or addicted to haram. The guy at Fajr, he's addicted to Fajr. So he's so addicted that one day you come to Fajr, you don't find him. Where's brother so-and-so? You have to call him because he's definitely sick. You call him and you ask him what happened. He goes, I had to send my mother to the airport. Or I had to take my sister to the airport. Or my daughter was traveling. Or he says, I wasn't feeling well, because he's addicted to good. You have someone else, he's addicted to the Quran. He has to read the Quran every day. A day goes by, he gets busy or something happens and his routine is hit and he's not able to read his Quran that day. He becomes anxious and agitated and he becomes discomfort, because he has a good addiction. You're either going to be addicted in khair, in good, or you're going to be addicted in bad. Having an addiction in khair is all discipline. It's all tazkiyah. Islam came to grant us tazkiyah naturally through the Prophet ﷺ and through the Quran and the obligations of Allah. This is our little intro for today. Now moving forward, we were speaking about the virtue of seeking knowledge, and we said that seeking knowledge is not easy. We quoted Imam Shafi'i's famous poem. He has a famous poem. He said that you will never receive knowledge except with 6 things. Let me tell you about it. He said you have to be strong and you're smart. You have to have a passion. You have to exert effort. And you have to have the means in order to receive the knowledge, the means to go travel and means to buy books. And then he said you have to be close to your teacher and never leave your teacher off. You know, you always be close to your teacher. You ask your teacher questions and you always are with him. And you have to have a lot of time. Yani knowledge is forever. I say this because knowledge is very virtuous. And in order to receive the virtue of knowledge, you need consistency. You need consistency and you need sincerity. That's the basis of everything. I'm going to mention one hadith in regards to this and then we'll continue. I wanted to mention this hadith in the last class because this is a really, really beautiful hadith in regards to seeking knowledge. And it grants us motivation for when we fall. Because last class we had about 2 times the amount of men. The girls are the same, mashallah. The girls are the same. Girls are always consistent. Guys, they come one time and their back hurts, this, that. That next time they come, it's a little rainy, they get tired. You know? No. Being consistent is the most difficult thing in the world. So sometimes you need to receive your motivation to be consistent through something. So this is a beautiful hadith I wanted to mention at last class. Last class we talked about the ayahs in regards to seeking knowledge. Allah in the Quran, there's so many ayahs talking about the virtue of knowledge. The Prophet ﷺ, he says in this beautiful hadith, من سلك طريقا يبتغي فيه علما سلك الله به طريقا إلى الجنة وإن الملائكة لتضع أجنحتها رضا لطالب العلم وإن العالم ليستغفر له من في السماوات ومن في الأرض حتى الحيطان في الماء وفضل العالم على العابد كفضل القمر على سائر الكواكب إن العلماء ورثة الأنبياء إن الأنبياء لم يورثوا دينارا ولا درهما إنما ورثوا العلم فمن أخذ به أخذ بحظ وافر رواه الترمذي. This hadith is a very, 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 very beautiful hadith. It's a very, very beautiful hadith in regards to the individual who's seeking knowledge. There's many narrations of this hadith with different wording. This is the narration of Imam al-Tirmidhi, his wording. من سلك طريقا يبتغي فيه علما سلك الله به طريقا إلى الجنة. Whomsoever embarks upon a path of knowledge. I'm mentioning this to you all Because perhaps your father brought you here, or perhaps you're here and you don't understand the immense virtue that it is that you get when you sit here. You get virtue by sitting, listening, and increasing in knowledge is all virtue. To the extent where the scholars would differ upon, they would not differ upon, they would say that to continuing studying and to revise your notes is more virtuous than praying sunnah, because you're increasing in knowledge. And the knowledgeable individual is stronger on the shaitan than 1,000 worshippers. The knowledgeable individual, the individual of knowledge, is stronger on the shaitan. He responds to doubts, and he protects the religion of Islam, and he teaches halal and haram. Revising and reading and gaining knowledge is more virtuous than praying sunnah. So whomsoever embarks upon a path seeking knowledge, سَلَّكَ اللَّهُ بِهِ طَرِيقًا إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ, Allah will grant him a path to Jannah. Meaning that when you go and you embark upon seeking beneficial knowledge or knowledge, that equates to Allah granting you a path to Jannah. Yani I am coming to Masjid Yunus every Monday and every Wednesday, and I'm going to Shaykh Osama's classes whenever he has classes, because I want the pleasure of Allah and I want to increase myself in knowledge. I receive something through that. I receive a path to Jannah. Allah makes my path and my way to Jannah made easy for me. So whomsoever embarks upon a path seeking knowledge, Allah opens a path for him to Jannah. وَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ لَا تَضَعُ أَجْنِحَتَهَا رِضًا لِطَالِبِ الْعِلْمِ. In the angels, they place their wings down. This is a beautiful parable. Like the angels, they place their wings down due to the pleasure of the student of knowledge and what he's doing and the act that he's doing. So now the angel sees you all seeking knowledge, and out of the immense humility the angel has for us, he puts his wings down. Like he puts his wings down out of humility and out of pleasure for the student of knowledge and what he's doing. Yani showing that this is an immense act. وَإِنَّ الْعَالِمَ لَيَسْتَغْفِرُ لَهُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ حَتَّى الْحِيطَانُ فِي الْمَاءِ. And indeed the scholar, or the individual that's seeking knowledge, indeed the scholar, everything on the heavens and in the earth make istighfar for him. All the birds and all the creatures, everything on earth and in the sea, make istighfar, ask for forgiveness for this person in his seeking of knowledge. Yani when you're seeking knowledge, in the mode of seeking knowledge, you are receiving the istighfar of all the creatures in the world. حتى الحيطان في الماء, even the fish and even the whale in the ocean. This hadith is phenomenal. Yani even the whale in the ocean, and the whale in the ocean is making istighfar for me. The whale in the ocean that's 6,000 miles deep or whatever, nowhere near me. Allah is saying that every creature on earth makes istighfar, asks for forgiveness for the slave, the one who's seeking knowledge, due to its immense virtue. Then he goes and he speaks about the virtue of knowledge in the knowledgeable person. وَفَضْلُ الْعَالِمِ عَلَى الْعَابِدِ كَفَضْلِ الْقَمَرِ عَلى سَائِرِ الْكَوَاكِبِ. And the Prophet ﷺ, he was the greatest of teachers. He used to give analogies to his companions so they may understand, so it could come close to them. He said, in the virtue of the scholar, as opposed to the person who is a person of worship, وَفَضْلُ الْعَالِمِ عَلَى الْعَابِدِ, the virtue of the scholar over the worshipper. Because the worshipper, like we said, he's not a person of knowledge. He worships Allah for himself. May Allah bless him and accept it from him. He worships Allah. He receives the benefit for himself. The scholar studies and teaches and he benefits the ummah. The scholar studies and he teaches halal, haram, responding to doubts, writes books. He benefits the ummah. He benefits the whole ummah due to his knowledge. So the virtue of the scholar over the worshipper, كَفَضْلِ الْقَمَرِ عَلَى سَائِرِ الْكَوَاكِبِ, is like the virtue of the moon as opposed to all the other stars. The moon is the greatest and most bright of all the stars, right? And then he says, إِنَّ الْعُلَمَاءَ وَرَثَةُ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ. Indeed, the scholars are the inheritance of the prophets, because right now there's no more prophethood. Prophethood has cut off from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. ما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين. Muhammad was not the father of any of your men. However, he was Rasulullah, he was the messenger of Allah, وخاتم النبيين, and he was the seal of all prophets. Prophethood has ceased, but something continues. That's the tradition. The tradition of Islam continues through scholarship, through knowledge, through seeking knowledge. إن العلماء ورثة الأنبياء. Indeed, the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. They inherit what the prophets did, taught and granted purification to us. And then إن الأنبياء لم يورثوا دينارا ولا درهما إنما ورثوا العلم فمن أخذ به أخذ بحظ وافر. And indeed, the prophets and messengers, they did not leave behind something to inherit from monetary gain. They did not leave behind money to inherit. We did not inherit money. However, they left behind knowledge. However, they left behind knowledge to be inherited. That's why the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets, because they inherited the knowledge of the prophets. فَمَنْ أَخَذَ بِهِ أَخَذَ بِحَظٍ وَافِرٍ. So whomsoever takes this knowledge and receives a portion of it, he has been granted an abundant good. He has been granted an abundant good. We mentioned this hadith to grant us all motivation and to understand the extreme benefit it is in seeking knowledge, due to the exhaustingness or the tiredness or whatever it is that is attached to it. Because nothing is made easy. Nothing that is gained through ease remains. If it's difficult to reach or attain something, it remains. Right now you have everything to your door. Uber Eats comes to your door. It doesn't taste as good as when you go out and you get it. It does not taste as good. Getting something that you did not work for does not taste as good. It does not taste as good. When you don't work and you don't have a job and your dad feeds you, it's whatever, mac and cheese, normal. Like, you don't feel it. Then you go and you work and you sweat and you lose sleep and you wake up to an alarm and you shower and you rush to work. You get late to work. Pay is cut from you and you go buy food on your break. The wackest mac and cheese, you say it's delicious. It's so good because it's your sweat and effort. Anything that you sweat or you exert exhaustion through receiving lasts longer and tastes better, figuratively and physically. Real life and fake life. Like when you go to your teacher and you go to the house of your teacher to read Quran to him. I give this example because this is a famous example. It's an example like in Egypt, there's Quran teachers. Now everything is Uber Eats to your door. You could pay a Quran teacher. He comes to your door. He knocks your door. He wakes you up from your sleep. You go wash your face and you read Quran to him. He comes to your door. You don't feel nothing. There's no effort. You're in your air condition of your house. You don't feel it. Then you have a student where he goes to his Shaykh in his Shaykh's masjid. His Shaykh's masjid is the 13th stop off the metro in Cairo. The metro in Cairo is an example of Yawm al-Qiyamah. You're going to go, it's going to break down, you're going to sweat. There's no air conditioning in the metro in Cairo. It's all hot. It's all hot and everyone's tired. Someone's listening to something out loud. Someone is selling something. You're inconvenienced and you're holding and the thing is stopping and going and there's no place to breathe. And then 13 stops of torture. Each stop is like a different station of the stations of the Yawm al-Qiyamah. And then you finally get to your teacher's stop. You leave the metro. And then you take a little rickshaw or tuk-tuk from the metro station to the teacher's masjid. You get to the teacher's masjid, you enter the teacher's masjid, and you go pray tahiyyat al-masjid, and you go wait for your teacher, and you see there's a line. You go and you realize something. You realize that you're not important. Wallahi, there's how many other people are doing exactly what you're doing in order to receive this Quran? How many people are just like you? The 17 African students from Senegal and Gambia and Mali, you're not better than them. They all wait and they're waiting and they're smiling as they wait. But you're spoiled. You're from America. You go and you see 7 people in front of you and you go, I want time with my teacher. Unlike the person who Uber Eats. He Uber Eats his Quran to his door. His teacher came and he read to him. He paid him a lot of money and he went. He did not receive true Quran. This guy that went and spent half his day to get to the teacher, then he waited in the hot masjid because the masjid doesn't keep the AC on because it's all on the government pays for the electric bill. And you're sweating and the fly keeps hitting you and you go wash your face again and you come back and you're still waiting in line. Then it's your turn to read. Then you read to your teacher. Then you receive knowledge. This is something you'll never forget. That 5 minutes you spend with your teacher, that 30 minutes, that hour that you spend that you worked hard for, wallahi, you'll never forget what you read to him. Wallahi. You have dreams of that day. You have dreams of that class. Because you worked hard for it. Anything that you work hard for, it remains. Anything that you exert effort to achieve or to attain, it remains strong. I say this because seeking knowledge is difficult, coming to the masjid is difficult, getting ready to go to the masjid is difficult. All of this is tiring and exhausting, but it remains if there's effort. If there's effort involved in it, it remains. The Prophet, he said that فَقِيهٌ وَاحِدٌ أَشَدُّ عَلَى الشَّيْطَانِ مِنْ أَلْفِ عَابِدٍ. This is exactly in line with what we said, that one person of knowledge and understanding is stronger on the shaitan than 1,000 ignorant followers. Than 1,000 people that worship Allah. As we said, the individual that worships Allah, he worships Allah for himself. He doesn't go and he does not benefit the ummah. Now moving forward, Tazkiyah is purification. The prophets and messengers, they all came down from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relay unto us what Allah has sent to them. Message. Quran, Zabur, the Psalms of David, the Torah of Musa alayhi salam, the Injil of Isa alayhi salam, the Gospels, the Suhuf of Ibrahim. Everything that the prophets came with. The prophets, they came to us to relay unto us their scriptures and to teach us halal and haram, to grant us different shari'ahs, right? We receive from the Prophet and messengers revelation and tazkiyah. We said tazkiyah. Tasawwuf is basically a disciplining of your soul and being respectful. That's basically what it is. So our Prophet's greatest purpose, Rasulullah ﷺ, was to teach us the kitab and the hikmah, the Quran and the Sunnah, and to grant us a purification of our own souls. So now we have a hadith in this chapter, or in this topic, in regards to Tazkiyah. And this hadith is a comprehensive hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Utitu jawami al-kalimi. He said, I was gifted immaculate speech. The Prophet, he speaks about himself. He goes, Utitu jawami al-kalim. He goes, I was gifted, I was given by Allah. Jawami al-kalim. They say jawami al-kalim is comprehensive speech. It's saying something small with a lot of meaning. The Quran is the most eloquent of all speech because it's the speech of Allah. There's nothing more eloquent than the Quran. By consensus of scholars, Muslim and non-Muslim. Muslim and non-Muslim, I say. Christian, Arab. Atheist, Arab. No one can deny the eloquency of the Arabic language in the Quran. It's the pinnacle of Arabic. The greatest of all Arabic. No one can deny this because the Christian, Orthodox Christian, Maronite, Lebanese Christian that teaches at Beirut University, teaches Arabic in Beirut University, they speak about in their first class, the Arabic literature, that the Quran is the most eloquent speech. The most eloquent Arabic is Quran. No doubt. Second most eloquent Arabic in the world is what? Huh? The Sunnah. Jazakallah khair. Second most eloquent speech, because Quran is Allah. Quran speech of Allah. Nothing champions Allah. The second most eloquent thing is the Sunnah. Eloquency is what? What is eloquency? Eloquency comes down to one thing. Small amount of words, a lot of meaning. Like the less words, the more meaning. The Quran is 604 pages. The Gospels and the Torah and the Gospels are like 1,600 pages, like four times the amount of the Quran. The Quran is minute and small and precise in its wording and a lot in its meaning. The Quran is something like you'll never see in your life. Like one ayah of Quran, one ayah, you go and you open Tafsir al-Razi, Imam al-Razi, he has a book of tafsir, probably the most famous tafsir ever written, called Mafatih al-Ghayb. The unlockers, Mafatih, the keys to what? Al-Ghayb, the unseen, because he unlocks the unseen secrets of the Quran through this tafsir. It's a beautiful tafsir. You go read his tafsir, and you just don't know how he did it. Like you say, how was this man not a jinn? How was he a human? He comes with an ayah of the Quran, 4 words, 5 words ayah, 7 words ayah, and he goes 35 pages talking about this one ayah. 35 different linguistic miracles of the ayah. All of this he brings out. All of these different things he comes out with. This is Quran. Small amount, a lot of to take out from. What's the second most thing like this? The Sunnah comes next. So the Prophet, he says, I was granted immaculate speech. I was granted comprehensive speech. The Prophet ﷺ Sunnah, he says a hadith. It has 4 words in it. It has 5 words in it. The scholars, they write a book on it. One hadith, they write a book on it. A book. This is immaculate speech, comprehensive speech. Then they talk about the next thing after the Quran, after the Sunnah, in terms of literacy in Arabic. If you want to talk about Arabic literature, they say the poetry of the Arabs before Islam. Because we have pre-Islam, post-Islam. So Arab al-Jahiliyyah, they call it the time of ignorance. The time of ignorance. The time of ignorance is a time period, yani before Islam, pre-Islam. The pinnacle of the Arabic language was at that timing. Right before Islam came, it was the strongest of all Arabic language. So we had certain poets, because Arabic was a oral tradition. Arabic was not written. They were people of the desert, and they used to be immaculate and very eloquent in their speech. And we have 10 famous one. It's called al-Mu'allaqat al-Sab' or Mu'allaqat al-Ashara, the 10 hanging poems that they put them on the Kaaba. You know, now we're Muslims, so we have the Kaaba, Islam. We have a black shroud around the Kaaba with Ayat al-Kursi and with ayahs of the Quran and Allah's name. It's Islamic now. Before Islam, the polytheists of Mecca, they used to put on the Kaaba the 7 famous poems. The 7 famous poems, or the 10 famous poems written by the 10 famous poets of the Arabs before Islam, Imra al-Qais and all of these different poets, because their eloquency in their language was unparalleled. So Quran, Sunnah, and then this timing was a very strong timing for Arabic language. And then it goes down, to the different time periods. So in this hadith is a comprehensive hadith of the religion of Islam. It's the most famous hadith. It's the hadith that you begin. When you start fiqh, when you start talking about fiqh, you speak of this hadith. When you start speaking about aqidah, you speak of this hadith. When you start speaking about tasawwuf or tazkiyah, which is what we're talking about, you speak about this hadith. So ultimately we realize that Islam is comprised of 3 components. We're going to get into all this in detail with this hadith. You realize that Islam is comprised are comprised of three components. Islam is three. Islam is Islam, which is your bodily actions. Your bodily actions. Islam, to pray salah, to give zakah, hajj, etc. Bodily actions. Stuff that anyone can do, even if he has hypocrisy in his heart. Then the second thing that we have in Islam is Iman, which is belief. It's in the heart. It's not something you see. It's something that you believe. Heart, belief. You believe in certain things in the religion. And it's the third thing, which is Ihsan, which is the highest level. Which is the highest level of being a Muslim, is having Ihsan, which is what they call this science that we're doing, Tazkiyah, is based upon this third thing. It's to worship Allah at a high level. To be a high level in your worship. To worship Allah is like you see Allah. Like you're worshiping Allah like you see Him. And if you don't see Him, then He sees you. So there's two levels of ihsan. The first one is that you worship Allah like you see Him. And the second one is like you see Him. This hadith is comprehensive and it's beautiful. They call this hadith that we're going to get into, it's called Hadith Jibreel. Scholars, they call it the Hadith of Jibreel. Why do they call it the Hadith of Jibreel? Does anybody know? Huh? Good. You know, that's right. Salman, that's right. I want to hear what you said. Yeah, go on. Sallallahu Mujtaba, right? That's right. Correct. You're both right. This is called Hadith of Jibreel because Jibreel alayhi salam, he came in the form of a human and he sat on the Prophet's knees and he talked to the Prophet and he asked the Prophet a number of questions regarding the religion of Islam. That's why we call it the Hadith of Jibreel. But I want to say something to you all. Usually we say, when we talk about Hadith, we say the Hadith of Anas, or the Hadith of Amr, or the Hadith of Muawiyah, or the Hadith of Ali. Why is this called the Hadith of Jibreel? Because Jibreel is not the narrator. The narrator of the Hadith is the companion that narrated the Hadith. The companion that was with the Prophet and narrated the Hadith is the narrator of the Hadith. But this Hadith we call it the Hadith of Jibreel. So who's the narrator of this Hadith? This famous Hadith. Who's the narrator? Does anyone know? Huh? Good job. MashaAllah. No, MashaAllah. I did not expect you to know that. Very good job. Wallahi. The narrator of this famous Hadith, this is a very famous Hadith. This is in all the Hadith books. Every Hadith book brings this Hadith. It's a very famous Hadith because we said it's like the mother of all Hadith. The narrator of the Hadith is Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab. Umar ibn al-Khattab, he's the one who narrates the Hadith. So even the narrator of the Hadith is a prominent figure in Islam. Who was Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab? Who was he? Who was he? Huh? Second, what else was about him? What else do you know about him? Yeah? What was that? Was he the father-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ? Yes, he was, yeah. Yeah, because he was married to his daughter. Correct. What else do we know about Sayyidina Umar? What was his nickname? Good, Al-Faruq. What does that mean? Huh? Yeah, it's true. Yeah, the criterion. A criterion is something that differentiates. A criterion, we have Surah Al-Furqan. If you look at the meaning of Furqan, it's the differentiator. That which differentiates, because Furqan is the name of Quran. The Quran is a Furqan. تبارك الذي نزل الفرقان على عبده. The Quran comes to differentiate between many things. The Quran comes to differentiate from falsehood and truth and falsehood, and it comes to show us halal and haram. It's a differentiator. So Sayyidina Umar was called a Faruq, Al-Faruq Umar. Why was he called Al-Faruq Layth? Why? Inan, why was Umar? Why was he called Faruq? Huh? Yes, good. He got it. Because he would differentiate from falsehood and truth. And Sayyidina Umar was a very zealous and strong man. And sometimes you need that. And the Prophet ﷺ, he used to make dua in the beginning of Islam because Islam was subjugated and they were oppressed by the mushrikun. And the Prophet, he said, "Oh Allah, grant us izzah, grant us pride from one of the two Umars. Umar ibn al-Khattab and Amr ibn Hisham. Amr ibn Hisham is Abu Jahl. We want a strong figure. We want a strong figure to come and grant us victory in our religion. And the greatest of you in Jahiliyyah are the greatest of you in Islam." Why is the greatest person in Jahiliyyah the greatest in Islam? Because if he's in Jahiliyyah and he's a strong individual and he's a strong guy, he's going to be strong in Islam. And that's exactly what happened to Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab. In Islam we have an actual name of someone, and we have a nickname of someone, and we have a kunya for someone. Who knows Sayyidina Umar's kunya? No, that's his name. Umar ibn al-Khattab is his name, and his nickname is Faruq. What's his kunya? His kunya is his agnomen, the father of what? Huh? Sayyidina Umar, what was his kunya? The Prophet ﷺ is Abu al-Qasim. Ali is Abu al-Hasan. Sayyidina Ali is Abu al-Hasan. What is Sayyidina Umar's kunya? No. No. No, no, no. His kunya, his father of who? He's known as father of someone. Yes, Abdullah ibn Umar is his son, no doubt. No, but it's not his oldest son. What's his agnomen? We have something called a name. My name is Ismail. My kunya is, I don't have a kunya because I don't have a son, but the Arab used to give people kunyas as like a side nickname or after his oldest son, and then they have a nickname. I have a nickname too, but it's expired. But Sayyidina Umar's agnomen or his kunya was Aba Hafs, the father of Hafs. And Hafs is a lion, meaning that he's a lion. You call him the father. Abu Huraira is the father of a cat. Abu Huraira, the father of a cat. Was his son's name Huraira? Abu Huraira? No. That's like a nickname the Prophet gave him because he always had a cat in his thobe. He had a thobe, a long robe, and he always had a cat in it. So the Prophet said, Ya Abu Huraira, oh father of the cat, you always have a cat. You have someone, he has long hair, he loves his hair. Someone he has long hair, he grows his hair out, he puts oil in his hair, he walks to the mosque, he walks with his hair out. He's proud of his hair. The Egyptian guy, he sees them Egyptians, they're funny people. He goes, Ya Aba Sha'r, oh come here, father of the hair, because you're so loving of your hair. So you become known as father of hair, father of a cat. Abu Hafs, Sayyidina Umar, father of a lion because he's a lion. You guys got that? So Sayyidina Umar is the narrator of this beautiful, profound, comprehensive, famous hadith. It's a long hadith. I was going to go over the hadith throughout the entire class, but we gave a nice introduction to Tazkiyah, so we're going to go over the hadith in the next class. This hadith is comprehensive. It's called the hadith of Jibreel, not the hadith of Umar. Because Jibreel alayhi salam comes in the hadith in the form of a human. So they refer to it as the hadith of Jibreel. Unlike other hadith that are narrated by certain companions, they refer to it as the hadith of Anas or the hadith of Muawiyah or the hadith of Ali. But here no, we say the hadith of Jibreel because it talks about Jibreel coming to visit the Prophet in human form. Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab is the narrator of this hadith. They call this hadith Sunnah or Sunnah. We have a Quranic surah in the Quran called al-Quran. What's al-Quran? Huh? Huh? No. Huh? What'd you say, sister? No, she was right. What'd you say? Yeah, Surah Al-Fatiha. What were you going to say, Amran? Yeah, Surah Al-Fatiha is known as the mother of the Quran, they say, because it encompasses the meanings of the whole Quran in its 7 verses. In the 7 verses of Surah Al-Fatiha, we find that it encompasses the entire meaning of the Quran in it. The meaning of the Quran is found in Surah Al-Fatiha. This is called Sunnah. This hadith is referred to as Sunnah, the mother of the Sunnah. Why is it called that? Yeah? Jazakallah khair. Wallahi, 10 out of 10. I need to start having money so I can give you cash. Because this is amazing. It encompasses the entire Sunnah in it. The same way that Surah Al-Fatiha is all encompassing to the whole Quran and the meanings of the Quran, this hadith, this long hadith, talks about everything in Islam, encompassing all of the Sunnah. It's encompassing to the entire meanings of the Sunnah. So this is the mother of a hadith. It's a beautiful hadith. We'll talk about it in detail next week. It's a beautiful hadith. We all have to be familiar with this hadith, and in order for us to talk about Tazkiyah, we talk about this hadith because Tazkiyah, we received it and we learned it from the Prophet ﷺ through this hadith. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us beneficial knowledge, and to accept from us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with beneficial knowledge and to increase us in all that's good. We continue our Tazkiyah classes next Monday after Salat al-Maghrib. We're going to be discussing this hadith next Monday after Salat al-Maghrib. It's a beautiful hadith with a lot of meanings and lessons from it. And Wednesday, which is after tomorrow, after Maghrib, we have our tafsir of Surah Yusuf, which is also an amazing class. If you're free on Wednesday after Maghrib, please join us. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.